Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon. Thank you for taking out time and joining in today's session. We'll just give a couple more seconds for the remaining attendees to join. If you're not able to hear me, please do let me know in the Q&A box or the chat box, and one of us will get in touch with you. Today's session is on discovery, assess, and migrate on-premise servers to Microsoft Azure. So today is one of the three sessions. The first session is, today is the first session. We are having two more sessions planned in the upcoming months. And all these three sessions are focused around giving information to our partners on how they can um, cost effectively move their customer workloads to Microsoft Azure. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat box, and I'll review the questions in intervals and hopefully answer all of them. In case I'm not able to answer all the questions, I will get back to you on an email. Wonderful. So let's get started. So a quick slide about myself. My name is Roshan. I'll be the presenter for today's session. I've been working with Ingram, Ingram Australia for a little over 2 years. I used to work for Ingram in the Middle East as well. I've been in the partner community or the channel market pretty much my entire career. I started working with Microsoft as a partner consultant, working with partners in UK and Ireland. Then I started working with MSPs for several years. Understood how the MSP works with customers, what kind of scenarios and issues they face. And currently, I'm working with Ingram Micro. I'm a certified Azure architect and a trainer. I've been working on Azure since the time it was known as Windows Azure. So I have seen Azure grow. I've seen Microsoft adding so many new features and functionalities. And today we will be talking about one of the most interesting features and functionality of Azure, which is how can you move to Azure? What are the options and functionalities does Azure provide in order to help you move your on-premise virtual machines or servers and databases and applications to Microsoft Azure. So the agenda is simple and short. So we'll look at what are the primary cloud migration triggers that we have seen from our experience working with Australian partners and customers. What are the top questions that we typically get from both partners and customers when they start planning and thinking about moving to cloud? What's Azure Migrate Service? How does it help you in addressing your customer concerns? What are the various scenarios and options available? What it can and cannot do. So we'll go deeper into this particular service. And towards the end, we'll also cover a migration offer that Ingram Micro is currently running to all its partners. So I'll quickly run through what this migration offer is from Ingram Micro, what is included, what you can expect out of this particular offer, and we'll also have a short demonstration on the overall Azure Migrate service. So we all know that everybody is now moving to cloud. The cloud migration or the cloud adoption has actually increased due to the pandemic situation. We have more and more customers now moving to cloud because uh, customers are now working remotely from home. Some of them are in metropolitan cities, some of them are working from regional locations, and they, though they are working remotely, they still want to be able to cater to their end customers' requests. So the adoption of cloud has, I would say, pretty much doubled. The digital transformation that we were hoping to achieve in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years has happened in the last 8 to 12 months itself. Every CIO, CEO now thinks about cloud whenever there is an IT discussion happening, whether it is looking at a new product or upgrading their infrastructure, looking at a new vendor. Cloud is one of the options that they always have in mind. And what we see happening in the very near future is more and more organizations will start adopting cloud one way or the other. Uh, I'm not saying that everybody 100% will have the infrastructure on cloud, but the trend that we have been seeing in the last 6 to 12 months is a lot of customers who were running on-prem are now setting up hybrid. They have critical servers running on cloud, some of the other servers running on-prem, backup happening on cloud. So they are planning, making sure their infrastructure is in place to move to cloud. And cloud is also providing a lot of revenue stream for our MSPs as well. Uh, as you'll see in today's session, lift and shift or moving from on-prem to Azure is just one piece in the puzzle or one piece in the migration. Once you're in the cloud, MSPs have a lot to offer in terms of optimization, in terms of security, in terms of modernization of the applications that are now on cloud. So cloud revenue is going to be one of the biggest revenue generators for a lot of MSPs and partners. If you're not selling cloud today, then you are missing a big chunk of revenue, which probably other partners are taking advantage of. So hopefully today's session will motivate you if you're not already supporting your customers to move to cloud. And you can always get in touch with Ingram Micro to see how we can best help you get trained on cloud and also help you build a cloud profitability plan where we can help you identify which customers are suitable, how you can move them to cloud, and help you develop that pipeline or roadmap for your customers in order to move to cloud. Now, some of the cloud migration triggers that we have seen in the recent years are the first one being data center contract expiry. This has probably been one of the main reasons why customers or even hosting providers are thinking of moving to cloud. As and when the customer who's using a 4-year, 5-year-old server starts thinking of should I go ahead and renew my existing hardware license and contract, or should I think of cloud? That's typically when we receive the request. And I would say 90% of the time when we receive such requests, we work with partners in order to build a solid value proposition around Microsoft Azure, its features and functionality, and how easy and simple it is to use and to migrate from on-prem to Azure. So if you do have customers who are approaching a data center or hardware contract expiry in the next 3 to 6 months, I think it's the right time to strike that conversation with them and see what their feedback is, what they're using, and also open that discussion with Ingram Micro and start preparing yourself in order to pitch and position and hopefully sell a cloud solution to them. The other requirement that we typically get is around business continuity. Backup is probably, I would say, the most used software in every customer. You would hardly find a customer who is not using a backup software. So in pandemic or even before pandemic, we always encouraged customers and partners to have cloud as a storage location for your backup, so that in case your on-premise servers fail or you're not able to access your on-prem servers, you always have a secure storage in cloud which you can use in order to restore to an on-prem servers, or you can actually restore in cloud itself. Azure especially has features which very well integrate with most of the popular backup software like Veeam, Acronis, Shadow Protect, Datto, Commvault. So I've worked with most of these backup software vendors, and all of them have not just backup operation functionality, but some of them actually even offer a restore option within the cloud itself. So in case your on-prem server fails for whatever reason, you can actually restore that server in cloud. Now think of present situation where Australia as a country, more or less, most of the states are in lockdown. And if your customer is running an on-prem system and for whatever reason, there is a failure in one of the VMs or one of the servers, it's very difficult to go to the office, fix, troubleshoot that scenario. Having a backup of that system in cloud gives you the functionality to straight away spin up that server in cloud and continue to provide services to the end customers as well. The other challenge that we have seen is cash flow challenges. Again, if you consider today's scenario, there has been hiring and firing happening in a lot of industries, and it's very difficult for customers to plan 3 to 5 years ahead and budget that and bring in servers that are required for it. They would want to start small, and they want the infrastructure to grow organically as their company grows, and not just um, growing and increasing the resources. They're also looking at these intelligent features and functionality that will help them scale, but at the same time not increase their cost too much, right? So cash flow challenges is something that we definitely see a lot of customers, especially we have customers who have been using in-house built .NET and Java applications and are now looking to move that to cloud, but not just move that as a lift and shift, but they're looking at using some of the advanced features and functionality, which will in many cases actually reduce their cost. If they compare that modernization in Azure to their on-prem servers, Azure cost sometimes is much cheaper because you end up paying only when you use it and you don't pay when you're not using it. So there are a lot of these advantages in cloud that we see that actually help in cash flow challenges. Cybersecurity threats, I'm sure everybody is aware of the cybersecurity landscape that is growing. Hackers are very active trying to hunt any sized customer, trying to get their details, not just end customer detail, but also bank details. We have seen in the recent past how a lot of customers who are using on-prem Exchange server being impacted. But the good part and the realization that came out of that attack was none of the customers who were on Exchange Online were affected, right? Now, the same will hold true even for on-premise workloads as well. Most of the critical data today is stored in some sort of a database. It can be flat file, it can be a relational, non-relational database, and having security around that is very important and critical. So cybersecurity threats is another reason why customers are now wanting to move to cloud, because cloud has artificial intelligence, machine learning that gives them the capabilities using which they can protect themselves from zero-day attacks. And they want to make sure that they are compliant, they're protected, they are abiding to the contract that they have signed with the customer. So it's very important and essential to protect the data that you're running on. Some of the other triggers that we have seen in the recent past is scalability. We have had customers who are running on-prem servers, and they have reached the capacity, the max capacity of what the on-prem servers can provide them. So now they are looking at a solution which can help them in some ways integrate with what they have and also expand their offering to their customers. So they want to still provide, or they still want to onboard more customers and at the same time not modify their overall application design or application infrastructure. So cloud allows you to spin up servers in a matter of minutes, have it integrated with your on-premise servers, and for the end customer who is actually accessing this application, he doesn't even realize or need to know whether his connection is coming to on-prem or going to cloud. it becomes very seamless. So rapid uh, procurement and rapid scalability of servers is one of the requirements that we have seen coming from a lot of customers. Last but not the least, budget and resource constraints tied up very close to scalability. Since customers do not have big budgets, they do not want to go in that capex model of investing for their IT. They are looking at cloud option, which provides them an OPEX model where they can start small, pay for only what they want to use for a shorter term, and then based on their usage, they can keep expanding their infrastructure more and more. So these are about 6 common triggers that we have seen happening in today's market. So I just want to quickly post a poll there and just get to know from you, what are the triggers that you see in the market? So Nina, if you can go ahead and post that poll to the participants, and let's try and understand what are the common triggers they see in the poll. They see in the market. So if you can participate and let us know, do you have customers asking you for cloud because of business continuity, because of cybersecurity threats, because of data center contract expiry? You might have multiple options, multiple triggers. Try to select the most frequently asked one so that we understand what kind of scenarios your customers are facing. So I'll just be on this poll for another couple of seconds. Okay, great. Thank you very much for participating in the poll. So as we see here, business continuity is one of the top priorities that we see a lot of customers coming back. Backup and disaster recovery, I think that's probably one of the initial entry points into cloud, right? Followed by budget and data center contract expiry, and last but not the least is cybersecurity threats. Now, do remember, cybersecurity threats are increasing every day in, day out. So it's very important that you have those conversations with customers. Typically, customers wait till the time they get attacked, and then they think about, okay, what should I do so that I don't get impacted again? That's probably not the right way of planning. You can get attacked any day. So it's very important to have that proactive measure and making sure you have invested enough to protect your infrastructure, to protect your data. Now, having that investment in an on-prem infrastructure will cost you a lot of money, but having that set up in cloud will definitely cost you much less, and you could probably have a better security option as well in the cloud. Wonderful. Thank you, Nina, for that. Going back to the slides. So what are the top concerns? These are some of the questions that I typically get asked from customers when we start discussing. So they come to us saying, okay, we are interested in cloud, but can you help us with some of these questions? A lot of customers have not just one platform, they're using multiple platforms. We have customers who are using physical with Hyper-V and sometimes even VMware. We have customers using Windows 2003, 2008, even today. Though it's out of support, we have a lot of customers still using it. We have customers asking us, I do not plan to move everything to cloud. I want to see how I can move a subset of my infrastructure to cloud, make sure the performance, the functionality, the end user acceptance is there, and then plan on how I can move everything to cloud. So they are looking at setting up this hybrid infrastructure. That's probably the most common question that I get. They're also wanting to understand how good or bad or how ready or not is their infrastructure, right? So they are looking to plan and see, do they have to make any changes to their infrastructure before they start migrating to cloud? Is there a way that they can do some kind of a cloud ready assessment for their on-prem infrastructure and identify what are the loopholes, what are the gaps, that are currently in the infrastructure so that they can fix them and have the infrastructure ready to move to cloud. So these are some of the questions that I normally get. And last but not the least is cost, right? So they always want to know, okay, now that we are planning, if I say yes, let's go ahead and move, how much does it going to cost me, right? So these are some of the top questions that we see from our customers, and Azure has answers to all of them. Right? That's one of the beauties of Azure offering. So let's look at the service that is able to answer all these questions and get deeper into that features and functionality of the service. So the service that provides answers to all your questions, all your customer questions, is Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is a central hub for all data center migration opportunities, right? This is one service that not only offers you assessment, it also offers you migration. So it is one tool or one offering from Azure that can discover what you have. It can discover Windows, Linux, web-based application, database servers, RDS servers. It can identify which servers are ready and not ready, what you need to make changes, or it tells you why is it not ready so that you can then take further actions. It also helps you identify dependencies as well. So it has plugins where you can identify which servers are dependent on which other servers. Let's say you have an N-tier architecture application which has different roles running on different servers, and you want to identify which roles should I migrate as a batch, right? It offers you that dependency mapping functionality as well. It not only offers, I mean, this particular Azure Migrate, like it says, is a hub. So it is not just services offered by Microsoft. In this hub, you'll also see services from third-party companies. Corent is one such company. CloudAmaze is another such company, where you could use those third-party solutions, integrate them with Azure Migrate to provide you a much deeper assessment or a much application-specific assessment, and then take a decision on how you would like to move them to cloud. It provides you detailed tracking and monitoring as well. So during the migration, post the migration, or even before the migration, you would want to know what is happening to the infrastructure, how many VMs are ready, how much of the data is migrated, uh, how much is the cost of that migrated data in cloud. So all these detailed information is provided to you by Azure Migrate. And if you look at it from MSP standpoint, it is very easy and simple, because now you need to use one tool to do migration for all your customers. So you don't have to specialize in multiple tools, nor you have to build your team to learn and get certified on multiple different tools. One tool which does discovery, assessment, and migration of pretty much most of the on-premise workloads: VMware, Hyper-V, physical servers, LAMStack, WAMStack, any kind of remote desktop infrastructure, whether it is a VMware Horizon, Citrix, or even Windows RDS, right? So it has various features, functionalities, plugins with third-party tools that can help you address all these various scenarios and move those scenarios to cloud. So let's go into a little bit more detail and see which workloads of on-prem can you map and migrate, what are the tools and functionalities, and we'll go into we'll look at more details in terms of, for example, database and virtualization virtual desktop and things like this. So the first one, simple, straightforward. You are running on-premise Windows Server, SQL Server, web servers, and these can be running on physical VMware, Hyper-V, or on AWS as well. So the tool is not just helping you migrate from on-premise to cloud, it also helps you from cloud to cloud. So it's the same tool that can potentially help you move from Amazon Web Services to Azure as well. Now, you might have a question saying that why should I move? Why should I move from AWS to Azure? What's the benefit? In the upcoming slides, you will see a lot of cost benefits that you will actually get only in Azure and not in AWS. So we'll cover that in the upcoming slides. But taking a step back, if you have customers who are using on-premise, whether it is in their own office or in their own premise hosted, or in a co-located hosted like NextDC, or if you are a hosting provider, then you can still use Azure Migrate to identify the customer workloads and migrate those customer workloads to Azure. Now, you can move them to virtual machines in Azure, or you can also work with Ingram Micro to see how from virtual machines you can convert them into, let's say, Kubernetes containers, or if you want to take another step ahead, we can also help you transform them to serverless technology as well. So if you're looking at infrastructure as service, we can definitely support you with that. If you'd like to modernize it further, that is also something we can definitely offer you. And Azure has those features and functionalities to help you transform not just stay at infrastructure as service. The other functionality of the same tool is database, especially talking about SQL Server. I've seen a lot of customers use SQL Server for a lot of their custom applications. Some of the applications that I come across on a daily basis is MyOb, Xero, Ostendo, .NET, in-house .NET and Java built applications that use SQL in the backend. Now, SQL migration within Azure has multiple options, because Azure provides you three different flavors of Azure SQL Server: SQL Database as a Service, SQL Managed Instance, and SQL Server running on a virtual machine. The beauty of Azure Migrate is it has a dedicated section for database migration, and that lets you migrate into either one of them. So it is not forcing you to move only into SQL Server running on a virtual machine. You can actually directly move into database as a service or SQL Managed Instance. Now, for customers who are fairly new to the SQL Server options on Azure, I quickly want to run you through what are the different options of SQL in Azure, which one fits best for your scenario, and how does Azure Migrate help you there. So option number one, SQL Server running on Azure Virtual Machine. This is a typical scenario where you can think of it as a Windows Server machine on which you have installed SQL Server. So you control the operating system, you control the SQL Server edition, the version. You pretty much have complete access and control over that particular machine. So this is an option where if you want to have complete control, this is one option. The second option is probably the best option in my opinion, is SQL Managed Instance. So this is a service offering from Microsoft, which has best of both worlds. It has features and functionality that you get similar to SQL running on a virtual machine, and it has the scalability, flexibility, security options that are offered in platform as a service. So SQL Managed Instance is like I said, best of both worlds. It's fully compatible with migrating your on-premise SQL servers to Azure. And the last option is SQL Database as a Service. This is more for customers who have, let's say, applications which are software as a service, where they have multiple customers using the same application, and the application is already running as software as a service, or modern cloud application is what I would say. So these are the three flavors of SQL available in Azure, and Azure Migrate or Azure Database Service Migration Assistant can help you move to any one of them. Now, quickly looking at which is the right option for you. So if your customer wants to move to cloud as quickly as possible, but he still wants to have control over the entire SQL schema, the collation, the operating system on which it runs. He wants to have a backup of the operating system along with the database and have that uh, full control. Then SQL Server on a virtual machine is what is recommended. If the customer wants to move to cloud but does not really want to have that overhead of managing and maintaining the server, right? But still wants to have all the functionality of SQL, right? So he doesn't want to worry about the uptime of the SQL server, but still wants to have all the functionalities of the SQL server. That is where you would use a SQL managed instance. The last one is if the customer has already built a multi-tenanted application and he sees that this application scales based on user activity, right? So which means it can scale up and scale down sometimes, and wants to have super fast performance, and again the performance changes based on user activity, then again SQL database as a service is that option for it. Now each of them have their own management features or management uh, options. Some of them you would actually need to invest more time in order to make sure it is running as expected. Some of them Microsoft actually manages them for you. So option one, SQL Server on virtual machine, you manage everything from the operating system level. So think of it as very similar to infrastructure as service, right? Even in infrastructure as service, you control what operating system, what application, what database goes into. So this is SQL Server on infrastructure as service. The second one is, I would say, best of both worlds, right? So this is where you don't have to worry about the operating system. You don't have to worry about high availability, backup, disaster recovery, patching, updating, managing it. You only worry about SQL Server features and functionality, how the data goes into it, uh, what kind of or what size of databases do I want in it. So you worry more from a SQL level and above, and you do not really worry about the performance of SQL, the business continuity of the SQL Server at all. The last but not the least is SQL Database as a Service. Again, here, pretty much everything that is available in managed instance, except in terms of SQL features, you're limited. You can only have the features available or which are published by Microsoft, part of SQL Database as a Service. So hopefully that gives a very clear picture of the SQL Server options in Azure. And like I said earlier, Azure Migrate has the functionality which lets you move to one of these, to any one of this. So you have better control, and you're providing a better solution to your customer. Now, we also spoke about why Azure, right? Especially when you're moving from AWS to Azure. So this one slide is talking specifically about SQL Server, but it also applies to Windows Server. Now, Azure has a great cost saving option known as Azure Hybrid Benefit. Now, this is an Azure only offering, which means this is not available in, let's say, Google or AWS or IBM Cloud or any of the other cloud providers. So what does this Azure Hybrid Benefit mean? Azure Hybrid Benefit is applicable to any customer who has Windows Server or SQL Server license with software assurance, or if he purchases Windows Server and SQL Server license under a subscription model. So if he is falling into one of these two buckets, then the cost benefit of running that server in any other cloud is much more than running it on Azure. So let me give you an example. Let's say your customer is running SQL Server 2008 and he doesn't have a software assurance. Not a problem. When he moves to Azure or when he budgets for Azure, all he needs to do is buy SQL Server subscription license. Now these are core-based license. So the cores are basically the virtual cores that you get either in SQL managed instance or SQL database as service or SQL server running on a virtual machine. So you basically are licensing those virtual cores, and since you're purchasing the SQL server under subscription license, you become eligible for hybrid benefit, which in turn will give you a huge amount of discount. Now, a lot of customers, what they do is they actually combine this Azure hybrid benefit with reserved instance. So if you're not aware of reserved instance is a functionality which lets you reserve a resource for 1 year or 3 years, right? So it's like telling Microsoft that, hey, this machine I will be using for 1 year, it'll run 24/7, and for that Microsoft gives you a good discount. So you're getting a reserved instance discount, plus you're getting Azure hybrid benefit discount, and this discount offering is only available from Azure, right? Reservation is available in AWS, but you do not have Azure hybrid benefit in AWS. So this is applicable for both Windows and SQL Server. So if you have customers who are planning to move to cloud, this is probably the biggest benefit that you can give them in terms of cost when you combine Azure hybrid benefit plus reservations. So talking about, so we spoke about databases, we spoke about servers, but one of the other features that we get on pretty much daily basis is .NET application moving to cloud. Now, when we talk about .NET applications moving to cloud, we have several options, or Azure provides several options. Can you run your .NET application on traditional IIS server running on a Windows machine? Answer is yes, you can definitely do that. Azure also has something called app services. So think of it as website hosting services, right? So you can directly run your IIS, HTML, Java-based code on app services. So you don't have to worry about what OS is it running on, how many servers do I need, or what's the uptime of the server. So you don't have to worry about the typical IIS overhead that you get. So you can run on app services, or rather, you can even run on Azure Kubernetes services. And this is not just for monolithic application. If you have applications which are already built using microservices in mind, then it's no brainer. You can directly run it on Azure Kubernetes services. You can even use Azure functions so that you only are paying when the application is actually running. So as you can see, Azure has options for a single tier architecture, multiple tier architecture, cloud native application, and batch processing applications as well. So all these various options are available, and all these options integrate with various options of SQL database, right? So you can have, for example, Azure Kubernetes services hosting your front end, and you can have SQL database as a service hosting your database. So you can combine both of them and get best of both worlds. The next frequently asked migration offering that we get from partners and customers is remote desktop. Australia is a big market for remote desktop services. 1 in 3 customers that I speak to have some sort of a client server application, and they're running on some sort of a VDI infrastructure in their on-prem. Now, this VDI typically is remote desktop services or Windows remote desktop, but we have also seen VMware, we have also seen Citrix servers also being used. Now, if your customers are using any of these remote desktop or VDI infrastructure on-prem and are looking to move to cloud, again, Azure Migrate has an option to help you migrate them. Now here, you will see not just Azure Migrate native functionality, but Azure Migrate now has a third-party tool, which is free of cost, by the way. You could use that tool to get a deeper monitoring and analysis of your on-premise infrastructure, right, or your on-premise RDS setup. So I don't have a demo setup for this right now. So what I've done is I've taken snapshots of how you can use this tool to do an on-prem to Azure migration. So we will definitely go through these steps in the demo as well, but I wanted to quickly show you that Azure Migrate now has a VDI option, right? So you can go ahead, use Azure Migrate to assess your VDI. And when you're doing an assessment, a company called Lakeside has a tool called Systrack. This tool is integrated with Azure Migrate. So this tool will do a discovery and assessment of your on-premise RDS infrastructure. So it does a detailed analysis. It lists down various things. It lists down what's the CPU utilization, what's the end user session utilization, what's the IOPS of your RDS servers, how big are your user profile data, how frequently are users logging in, what type of data are they accessing and using. So it gives you very detailed information about your RDS, which will then help us plan for migration. So the step one is it gives you the tools to assess your on-premise RDS infrastructure. Step two, Azure now has Azure Virtual Desktop. This is a slightly older snapshot. It used to be known as Windows Virtual Desktop. Now it's known as Azure Virtual Desktop. So you can go ahead and create an Azure Virtual Desktop for pooled desktop, which means pooled desktops are for scenarios where you have one server accessed by multiple users, which is typically the scenario, right? You have one big fat RDS terminal server, multiple users logging in, each of them having their own session host. I'm sorry, each of them having their own session. So you go ahead and build an Azure Virtual Desktop for that terminal server or for that session host. So now you have done an assessment, you have created a session host in Azure. The third and the most important component is moving your on-premise user profile data to cloud. Now, again, Azure has two simple PowerShell commands that you can use to convert your on-premise user profile data into FS logic profile containers. So once you have completed these three steps, you pretty much have your on-premise RDS server migration done to Azure. Step four is in one of those rare cases where you have persistent VMs. So if you have dedicated servers providing dedicated sessions for your users in on-prem, right? That is when you would use a normal Azure migration to do those migrations, right? So that is how on-prem RDS servers can be used in order to migrate to cloud. So again, I just want to run a quick poll here to understand what are the typical RDS infrastructure your customers have. So Nina, if you can run the third poll, which is the RDS infrastructures that the customers have. Okay, there seems to be a problem. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and proceed further here. So, okay, here it is. So this question is around SQL Server. So if you can help me know which SQL Server is your customer using. So I'll also answer one of the frequently asked questions that I get from customers is, can I migrate SQL 2008 or SQL 2005 using Azure Migrate, right? So once you answer this question, I'll also go ahead and get an answer to that frequently asked question as well. So we'll wait on this particular poll for another couple of seconds. Okay, so let's look at the answers for this particular question. So that's very good to know. I see a lot of customers are already on 2012, 2014, 2016 and later, but I also see a good chunk of people on SQL 2008 and 2008 R2. Now, if your customers are on SQL 2008, 2008 R2, Azure Migrate Database Service will help you migrate it, right? And do remember, SQL 2008 is already end of support. So it's very important that you start having conversations with them and move them to cloud. you are not receiving, or the customer is not receiving security updates and patches, which means they are a potential target for cybersecurity attacks. So make sure the servers are patched and updated. Let's move on to the next slide, which is talking about migrate your VMware workloads to Azure. Now, this is very specialized or specific, talking about VMware infrastructure. So if you as an MSP are a hoster, you're currently hosting your infrastructure on VMware, and you're thinking of moving to Azure, then Azure actually has a dedicated offering called as Azure VMware Solution. So let's dig a little deeper and understand what this Azure VMware Solution is. Azure VMware Solution is a comprehensive VMware environment on Azure. So in simple English, think of it as dedicated servers in Azure data center, and these servers are running VMware software. They are running ESXi, vCenter, vSAN, NSX, HCX, all these native VMware tools and technology. So what's the benefit of it? One, Microsoft takes care of making sure these servers are up and running, the servers are secure. The second advantage is you can lift and shift or move your workloads from your VMware infrastructure to Azure using the VMware tools you already know, right? So you can actually use vMotion, vReplication to move your on-premise VMware workloads into Azure. Now, what's the other benefit? The other benefit is once you have moved your on-premise data center into Azure, you can then integrate your VMware workloads with other Azure solutions. For example, you can back up your entire VMware infrastructure and store it on Azure Blob. You can use Azure Active Directory to provide authentication. You can use multi-factor conditional access. You can use Azure Monitoring to provide monitoring of your entire infrastructure. You can use Azure Lab Services. Let's say if you want to quickly spin up a test and dev environment, you can use Azure features and functionality. So having your workloads, especially your VMware workloads on Azure, gives you best of both worlds. It gives you that scalability, flexibility, and adopting the latest and greatest features that Microsoft Azure has to offer. Setup and migration is simple. All you have to do is create an VMware, an Azure VMware solution, which will connect to your on-premise servers. You can actually use HCX to integrate it, and once it is integrated, you can actually do two-way replication. You can move data from your on-premise to Azure, Azure to on-prem, right? So this is an offering that you can go back to your customer asking if you want to run their infrastructure in your hosted services or in Azure. Now, in your hosted, you always have the capacity constraint. You only can have so many servers running in your hosted location or in your location. So you can have that stretched infrastructure where you are utilizing the capacity of cloud, Azure cloud, and you can have customers, let's say compliance related customers where they have to have data running on-prem. You can have those servers running on-prem in your data center and the rest of the servers running in Azure. So you can provide that scalability and become a true MSP where you're offering services to your customer no matter where they're running, whether it is running on cloud or on-prem. You're still able to offer them services, and your team, your support team, your services team are still using the tools that they are skilled on, trained on. They're still using VMware tools here, right? So this is one of the great offerings that Microsoft has. A lot of enterprise customers are using it, and if you have questions around it, Ingram Micro team is very much happy to work with you on that. So to quickly summarize, you can move Windows Server, SQL Server, Linux, and open source databases. You can actually move MySQL database into Cosmos DB. That's available on Microsoft. You can move MySQL into MySQL database as a service. You have Postgres database available in Azure. So all these various open source databases are also available in Azure. You can use Azure to set up a test and dev environment. A lot of customers, what they do is on-premise servers, they want to actually replicate to Azure. run it in Azure to make sure everything functions. So this is kind of a, you can say, a proof of concept environment, an exact replica of your on-prem running in Azure, so that you can test, try, make sure performance, compatibility, user acceptance, everything is done, and then make the switch into Azure. So that option is available. Azure provides dedicated certified SAP servers. That's another game-changing offering from Microsoft. We saw how you can move web servers and VDI servers to Azure. So these are the various options available for you. I'm sure all your customers will fit into one of these 8 buckets. And if they do, then Ingram Micro is more than happy to work with you and help you with our offer that we currently have. So before I jump onto the offer, I quickly want to know if anybody has any questions here so far. Okay, I don't see any questions coming up, so quickly proceed as we are getting close to the end of the time. So what is the Ingram Micro offering? So Ingram Micro currently is offering a free assessment and migration to any of your customer who wants to move to cloud. Right, so we will enable your team, which means we'll provide you training. We will help you with assessment of your customer's infrastructure. We will also assist you in migrating that infrastructure to cloud. So Ingram Micro will provide you these 3 services as a partner. These 3 services are offered to partner for no cost. Right? I say it again, for no cost. Now, what are the various scenarios that you can make use of this offer? If you have customers running on-premise Windows and SQL Server, you can move that to cloud and we will provide you assistance. On-premise RDS, web servers. If you want to move the on-premise servers and then modernize the servers into containers or serverless, we can help you with that. If you want to move Linux servers, on-prem servers to Azure, we can help you with that. If you want to not migrate, but if you have a customer who wants to not move anything from on-prem, but just want to freshly deploy virtual machines or virtual desktop in Azure, yes, we can provide that for a new customer. If your customer is wanting to move, or if you as an MSP are looking at moving your VMware workload, or your customer is using VMware and he is looking to move into Azure virtual Azure VMware solutions, we can help you with that as well. So all these scenarios are covered. So what services do we offer? We can help you with assessment, discovery and assessment, right? Now this discovery and assessment can be for VMware, for Windows SQL Server, for RDS servers, for Linux servers, any of this. So discovery and assessment can be provided. We'll provide you a detailed project plan on how the migration will happen, how long will it take, what if there are any roadblocks, how can we solve those roadblocks, right? So for example, if your customer is using Windows 2003, what do we do? How do we manage that? So we will provide you guidance and actually work with your team in order to assess that infrastructure and migrate. We'll sit with your team and migrate that infrastructure to cloud. We'll provide you an estimate, a quote on how much would that infrastructure cost once the customer moves to cloud. So we'll provide you with understanding what sort of infrastructure cost your customer might see once he moves to cloud. And we'll also provide you post-migration support. So once it's migrated, if they're facing any, for example, performance issues or any kind of troubleshooting ticket, we are more than happy to provide you support over that as well. So this is actually a great offering that Ingram has put together. I would strongly encourage all of you to make use of this. If you'd like to make use of this, I'm sure you would have already received the email from Sam Amhaj or from Ingram Micro. If not, please do get in touch with me and I will make sure you get qualified or you are part of this particular offer that Ingram is running. So we pretty much have come to the end of today's session. Unfortunately, there's no time for demonstration. I'll pre-record the demonstration and share that with you at a later stage. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me in today's session. Hope the session was helpful. Hope the session was informative. The one takeout that I want you guys to go with is the Ingram Micro offer. Right, this offer is running currently. It is open on first come first serve basis. So please do get in touch with us if you have customers looking to move to cloud. We will perform a discovery assessment and migration along with you. So you get trained and you move your customers to cloud. So beautiful offering available from Ingram Micro. So if you have any questions, now is the time to go ahead and post it on the Q&A, and I'll go ahead, review the questions and answer them. So we have a question here saying, if the customer has a current Azure hybrid AD environment, is that advantageous to test full migration, or does it complicate the process? Now, my assumption is that from the question, I'm assuming you have an Azure AD sync currently running, hopefully with Microsoft or Office 365. Now, that is actually advantageous. I mean, because you already have your identities created in cloud. So it gives us more options, or you can also think of a way that your identity piece of the migration is already taken care of. All we have to now test and assess and migrate is the actual workload. So it does not really complicate, it actually complements the overall migration process. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, great. So I don't see any questions popping up. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. So thank you very much for all your time and have a great day ahead. Thank you.